Well, hello, one and all, and welcome to A Celtic World, the YouTube channel for Celtic fans all over this beautiful world, from Minnesota to Montrose, from Sabah to Saltcoats, from Cairo to Cardiff. Wherever you join us, you're very welcome. Hello to all of our commentators in there. I hope you join in this session. This show has been a year in the making, isn't that right, Gav? And you'll notice also that I'm not Gav. And Gav had simply just shifted, because we live in Malaysia, it's easy to do, shifted and is taking something of a break today. So I'm going to be your host for this session. So welcome, everyone. And we'll do a little round because we have a very important guest tonight on the show. Welcome, James. How are you?
Fine, thank you. Great to be on.
Brilliant. It's fantastic. We've been talking about this for quite some time, and it's an important topic, and I think that a lot of people will find it interesting. Let's go round and say hello to Gav. How are you enjoying your little break from hosting, Gav?
I'm enjoying it very much. I feel a bit like a parent who's chasing after a little child on a bicycle, taking their first tentative trip down the road. No stabilizers.
No stabilizers.
So hopefully there'll be no grazed knees by the end of the night.
Well, I'll see what I can do, hopefully. But you'll put me right in case anything goes wrong. Who cares?
I'll catch you.
You gotcha. Ian, how's Wales?
I think it's like the rest of the UK. It's cold. Summer has only been an illusion. It's kind of, I think everyone's just a little bit depressed by the weather. I think everyone's gearing up for tomorrow. Well, not in Wales, obviously, because they didn't make it, because they're rubbish. So, gearing up for tomorrow for the kickoff of the internationals. I think, everyone can pretend to all be into international football for at least like 2 games, hopefully 3, hopefully more. But let's see.
I believe Richie Sunak was also very much aware that Wales weren't in it, right? I think he...
No. I mean, you can just keep on picking up his mistakes at the moment. The poor boy's going on about not having Sky TV growing up, so he's
absolutely
many issues.
So to everybody, welcome in the comments. Please do participate in this discussion as well. Ask questions if you want to as we go through this. Hello to everybody. James, we are going to come and we're going to speak to you and get to know you in much greater detail in a little while. But for the moment, what we're going to do is we're going to do a little bit of background as to why this show, why we called this show, and a little something that I think I'm not sure, was it Gav or was it Ian who did a poll on Celtic TV? Let's get into that. Gav, do you want to take us away there?
Yes, well, indeed, it was me. It was A Celtic World on Twitter. I did this poll. It's the first poll I've ever done, apart from Magda many years ago. But no, it was the first poll I've ever done. And this was the question: is Celtic TV up to scratch or value for money? And you can see the results there. Yes, it's great. Got under 7%. It's fine. It's acceptable. 35%. And weak, not worth it. Almost 58%. Now, this was born of the fact that, well, a lot of us, we're located all over the place, aren't we? And there are a number of means, I suppose, for watching Celtic. The most direct is the official Celtic TV channel, but it can be a source of tremendous frustration for people in terms of, well, what's on it and the quality of the commentators, the feed going down. There's all sorts of problems with it. So I thought it was interesting that the majority of people who answered this poll, 606 votes, thought that it was weak or not worth it. Now, unaccustomed as I am to doing polls on Twitter, Ian, is 606 enough to make the result meaningful? Or is that trifling compared to the polls that you put out?
No, I mean, I think in terms of the amount of people that follow the account, and maybe this is a good opportunity to say, if you don't follow the account on Twitter, please go over and follow the account and help it grow. But in terms of the amount of people and the amount of votes that you've got, I think is actually a strong indicator, because you've actually had, a lot of people engage with it relative to the subscribers at the moment. like if I put out like a poll, it can vary between like, I don't know, like 1,000 responses or 5,000 responses, depending on what the topic is. I think a lot of people do feel kind of passionate about streaming and Celtic TV, and I think that's why it's like relatively high versus the thing. But I think, look, I don't think it's a secret. I think anecdotally, I think we all know that those results are a reflection of people's feelings just from like chats with people and anecdotal evidence.
Well, let us know in the comments what you think about Celtic TV. There's plenty of comments that came in afterwards. I'll just pick a few of these out here. It's very unuser friendly for TV use. The stadium volume is poor. They had the option to put the mics down at the Green Brigade for atmosphere, but they don't do that. So there's no excitement generated by the sound of the fans, they reckon. There's a person called Dano here. I don't know if you recognize him. He says an interesting point, which is fan involvement through the club needs to be monetized and at a much higher level. It's exactly what we're talking about in this stream. He says it would make boatloads of cash for club and fans alike. Well, it's like he read our mind when he saw this poll. People really questioning whether it's worth it. Will I am there. And Celtic by Numbers, who we all know, Alan Morrison. Those that know the industry tell me there's loads more potential and things they could do with it, says he. Constantly cuts out or freezes. The Celtic board are so far stuck in the dark ages. The club suffers. It'll be like everything else Celtic do, done on the cheap. It's terrible. Audio is terrible. It's subpar. Wish it would improve. Is there any app for it? So as you can see, a fair amount of discontent. Various other things came up, like, very basic things, like there should be an option to turn off the commentary. That's one I would certainly use. Just hear the crowd. No more Jerry McCullough or whoever else is doing it. You can just watch the game with the atmosphere.
Yeah, Gav, I think there's an important distinction to be made as well when we talk about Celtic TV, because most people think of Celtic TV as the day of the game and streaming the game. Because if we actually look at a lot of the content that's put out, like, so the boys that do the unique angles, the guys that do like the Celtic podcast and stuff, that's all really well received. That is kind of technically under the Celtic TV umbrella. And I think if you said, are people happy with, like, when they do interviews with the players, like Greg Taylor's podcast, the Celtic View one is pretty good. The unique angle stuff is good. There's a lot of good stuff there. I think the majority of people, and rightly so, because it's what they consume. When we talk about Celtic TV, I think it is the maybe call it the match day experience that then leads into the overall package.
Yeah,
I that's Strangelove. Excuse me, Strangelove comment about purchasing it. That's very much my take on this. That I pay for Celtic TV, but I won't necessarily use Celtic TV. I do it to support the club, and as you say, there is elements of it that has content that is useful. And I think, Ian, one of the things that you do, obviously, for those who may not know, Ian goes by GastroCelt. I think you've got nearly 30,000 followers on Twitter. You see the interactions more with those game days, those unique angles. I tend to see those. Is that your observation as well?
Yeah, I mean, you tend to see that's what people share and engage in. That's why I say I think the distinction is, and I think that's maybe what makes it more of a hyper focus for people. I think there's a couple of different arguments going on. People kind of say they'd be happy to pay for the games and they don't want to use a stick and they don't want to stream illegally. I know in the past, people that I know have tried to use a VPN to get Celtic TV in the UK to watch the games because they're either based in Cardiff or London and can't get up. So I think there's a number of issues. But yeah, I think people love the unique angle stuff. I think increasingly the Celtic View podcast is doing really well. But those things are kind of accessible to us all, right? Like we see those on Twitter and we can see those on YouTube and things like that. But the stuff that's, and I think as well, the match day streams, etc., the majority of people that are actually probably commenting on those are people watching it with a stick. And I think, apart from anything else, there's a big opportunity that the SPFL is missing. So there's that angle as well in terms of, should the SPFL be doing more to provide a platform for all the clubs to capitalise on the people who want to watch it? Because it is, like, people like travel across from Ireland, up from Cardiff, up from London, etc. You know, even from the continent, as you guys will know. And there needs to be a better service for those people that spend the money.
So I think what we should do now, because I think that sort of paints the scene quite well, doesn't it? And I think this is a sort of shared experience, certainly for those of us who live abroad and at times have had to rely on Celtic TV for it. And I go back 4 or 5 years ago, it was almost unwatchable in terms of a feed coming through. It would stall, etc. So I think we've got a good sense of that. And I think this conversation isn't just about Celtic TV. And, you know, great that the effort that the guys that work on it do make it. I think it's a small team. But I think we're talking about a wider sense of fan engagement. So at which point I'm going to come over and say properly now, introducing James White. James, how about you give us a little bit of an intro about your background and maybe a little story that comes from whatever these traditional methods of fan engagement moving towards the digital age. Are you able to do that and say hello to everyone?
Sure. Thank you very much for having me on the Celtic World. It's I've watched a few of the shows before this, and I've known David for many years now, so it's a pleasure to be with you guys. To talk about something that's near and dear to my heart. I've been living in Asia since 1992, working in the sports marketing space. So I've worked with a lot of football clubs from Europe and the UK. I've been here in Malaysia now for 22 years, so been a long time in this region, but I'm originally from Minnesota, as David alluded to earlier, so I'm American by birth, but I've lived over in Asia longer than I ever lived in the US, so I feel more Asian these days. But so I these days I'm working in the digital space, so this conversation is very, very dear to my heart, you know, talking about how to reach more fans, how to be relevant to more fans as a club. Celtic, just to give you a short story, when I was in Glasgow many, many years ago, my son was a wee 4 or 5 years old, and walked into a Celtic merchandise store, and lo and behold, they had a teeny tiny little uniform, and so that was the first uniform my son ever had. He wore it to school proudly, loved the green and white, and still loves it to this day. Perhaps that's why he's a Boston Celtics fan as well. Anyway, but so that was the first uniform I ever bought for my son. So I've been working in the sports industry for many years now, working in the digital space, helping organizations, fan bases, individuals, podcasters, etc., to reach the widest audience they can, and also to help people to make a bit of money along the way. So that's kind of what I do these days. But in my previous iteration, I did work a lot with individual athletes. I worked, I was kind of a bit of a Jerry Maguire. I did a lot of work with Luis Figo, Ryan Giggs, Damon Hill, Colin Montgomery, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, the basketball player, even Evander Holyfield, right after he lost to Mike Tyson and had his ears bit off, brought him to Jakarta and spent a week with him. Interesting story. He always used to end his fights. They would try to interview him and say, you know, Evander, how did you win this fight? And he said, well, I'd like to thank the Lord Jesus Christ. There's nothing wrong with that, you know, but it would take the interviewer 3 or 4 efforts to try to get beyond that to talk about the fight. So we had arranged a few prayer sessions for him, knowing that he was born again Christian. He arrives, we give him the briefing. I said, is there anything else you'd like to do? And he says, James, what's the nightlife like in Jakarta? And so I saw my sponsor kind of shrink in their chair. Oh no, what's going on? I said, you gotta bring the sponsor out of the room. I'll come back and talk to you. Ask you. Brought the sponsor out, came back, asked him, I thought you were born again Christian. He said, oh no, that was my wife. I just got divorced. So I spent 4 nights partying with Evander Holyfield in Jakarta, and got a handwritten thank you note from him afterwards. So that's a lot of fun. But these days I'm focusing more on the digital space and meeting people like yourselves, and even the athletes I meet now are usually through video chats like this. So it's everything is becoming more digital, and I think a Celtic the Celtic TV needs to learn, I think, a bit more about this digital world that we're all in order to service the fans that exist, as well as reaching out and getting new fans to be Celtic supporters as well.
So we were having a chat about this before, leading up to the show, and I thought it was quite interesting in the sense that you'd been in that traditional world of selling franchise, getting TV spots, and you said that started to become really difficult, and actually the way to go then became obviously digital. Can you talk about that a bit, because that was really quite insightful for me in terms of the transition?
Sure. I mean, if you remember way back in the 90s, the EPL and European leagues were at the forefront of selling TV rights, broadcast rights to not only within the UK and Europe, but all around the world, to generate big bucks that they could then reinvest into players and stadiums and all sorts of other things. And that's kind of when everything skyrocketed in terms of the weekly player rates and all that stuff. It came on the back of global media rights and sponsorship rights. But these days, if you turn on your local broadcaster, whether it's Sky or Astro here, there aren't many TV commercials because the brands can get better response from their advertising dollar if they spend on social media or digital marketing. So they don't take out TV commercials or print ads anymore. They go straight to Facebook, Google, and to digital marketing. So those broadcasters have less money to spend on media rights. So the leagues are not relying on media rights as much anymore. Or if they are, it's a diminishing return for them. Sponsorship as well. Those same brands that aren't buying ads on TV can get a much better return through social media investment and digital investment. So why should they put their logo on the shirt? What kind of response, direct KPI are they getting back, or ROI are they getting back from that? And it's really more of a vanity play than anything else. So sponsors are becoming more smart with their money, and sponsorship and media rights are starting to go down. But all that money is moving into the digital space. So the sports teams and leagues need to also become digital organizations in order to retain that revenue that's moving. The revenue is moving, but they can still go into the digital space and grab it. They just need to keep their fans in their own environment, and then they can basically monetize those fans digitally through content, media content, and through e-commerce, advertising, sponsorship, etc. So you're right, David. Everything is changing, but it doesn't mean that sports is going to lose out. It's just that sports organizations need to become more relevant in today's world, which means they've got to become digital organizations as well.
So one of the things, Celtic, I know because you and I watch games, the Celtic games in the same bar that we happen to frequent. So obviously I know, but going deeper into Celtic as a football club, as an organization, our board is quite old school. Let's call it that. They're not hugely involved with fans. It would be fair to say, right? They probably don't have a great relationship, and there's a whole section of fans that they probably would like to get rid of as well. But I'm kind of the idea of moving this traditional, and they do fantastically well from a finance point of view. They can balance the books, absolutely. But to move this, is it going to be something that the fans tell them that we want this now? Or is it just financially inevitable that they're going to have to make a move? And what kind of timeframes are we going to be looking at for that type of thing?
Well, having worked in the football space for many years, football clubs, when it comes to media tech, are very slow to move. They're more like, I want to see it work for someone else first before I go and jump in and do that. Because they're not tech companies, they're football clubs. Their number one focus is output on the pitch. That is the number one focus. So, of course, they can't be blamed if they're not on the cutting edge of the digital space, right? So they're going to look around the world, see what the trends are, what's happening, what's successful, even if it's in other sports or other countries. And then once they see that opportunity, they're going to move in there and jump into it. But I would say within the next 5 years, every European football club is going to have a much larger digital team. Maybe a smaller sponsorship team and media team, and a much larger digital team, because all those functions will sit within the digital space. Because the money is going to be running through digital. So I think it won't be more than 5 years before we see a Celtic TV completely changed and offering different types of opportunities and engagements, two-way engagements, as Ian was talking about earlier, and Gav was talking about all these other podcasts. They're living independently all around the world on YouTube or wherever they sit. Audio, they're sitting on Spotify or wherever. But bringing them all together into one space would be a smart move, whether that's under Celtic TV or whether it's under A Celtic World, wherever that might be. But bringing all of the Celtic voices, whether they're in English or in Chinese or Japanese or Spanish, bringing all those conversations into one space digitally, that would really benefit Celtic as a club as well, because that one space can then become a valuable resource for the club and the club sponsors. And that's something that there are platforms out there that allow that and that are very good and easy to set up. So I think those types of things are really going to be happening in the next probably 2 to 5 years.
Can I ask a question there? Because I know I work in marketing. It's healthcare, but I've been to a couple of different presentations and things. I went to a presentation from a company called Contentful, which is a content management system, and they were talking about F1 and Formula One as of about, I think it was maybe 2 years ago, had like no digital footprint, no presence, and then they threw an absolute shed load of money into it, and within the space of 6 months, all the teams, all the drivers, everything had all the setup, all the digital things. They threw a lot of money at it, and now they're seeing a lot of money coming back from all the like we're talking about, the digital ads, etc. within that ecosystem. I know the same thing happened with Live Golf, the Saudis. They also threw a lot of money at it and upscaled it and things like that. And my question is, it's not simply a case of money with these sort of investments. I think when you look at an F1 or like the golf, that's kind of one unit, isn't it? And I think my question is it the case that we need to be looking at this as a league thing that needs to be driven by the league that then filters down? Or is it a case of we should be looking at saying to Celtic that they should be going out on their own? Because it would seem to me that realistically this is a thing that ultimately the league needs to solve and then filter down, as opposed to Celtic taking the lead on it. And I think that's maybe where the procrastination is happening. I don't know how you feel about that, James.
Sure. I mean, I think there's a two-pronged approach. If we're looking at Celtic TV, it's definitely the league, because the league owns that asset, right? So Celtic TV, I apologize, sorry. Celtic TV is owned by Celtic, but live broadcast rights are owned by the league, and that's where a majority of the eyeballs are. Now, I think, though, Celtic can be innovative. Celtic is the biggest club in Scotland, and Celtic, I think, if they want to be innovative and bring the other clubs along with them, they can make the first step. And supporters podcasts like this can really start even showcasing what Celtic should be doing. I think right now we see it all on YouTube, Instagram, even Twitch has podcasts, and they're sitting independent of each other. Now, if all of those podcasts came into one space, I think that would be a very powerful move, and it doesn't take a lot of money. I'm sure F1 has a lot of money to throw, Live Golf has a lot of money to throw, but most tech companies are willing to work, basically on a rev share basis. So they'll work with other organizations as long as there's a big potential moving forward. There's a lot of tech companies out there that don't have a big price tag for Celtic TV or anyone else to pay, as long as the potential is there. So, and the third point I'll make is live broadcast is great, but it's great for guys like us, our age. We love to sit back and watch a 2-hour broadcast. But my kids and the young, Gen Z and even younger generation, they'll never watch a 2-hour game. they're hard pressed to watch 10-minute highlights. They would rather just sit and get clips or very, very short term, or even just talk about the game, even without having watched all of it. So I think changing what we have on Celtic TV around from just the broadcasts and highlights and interviews to allowing people to create, maybe official creators who are allowed by the team and who are vetted, bringing those our perspectives onto Celtic TV, so that when I download it, I basically have multiple things to watch instead of just the things that the club pushes out. They could have Japanese creators, they could have Chinese creators, Spanish creators, even various voices of Celtic fan creators, instead of just the team itself and the commentators, right? So I think if they reach out to us a little bit, then we will respond in kind by watching them more. And also, because there are more things to watch, it's not just the match or the commentators talking before and after the game. It's guys like us talking on Celtic TV, and maybe having the ability for my followers and fans to come onto my show and ask me a question with their video and being part of the content. I think that'll reach out to a younger demographic.
It's my understanding with that, James, is essentially if you were looking at it from a Celtic TV point of view, at the moment they're probably going and saying, look, we have these amount of active users or engaged users, however, I don't know what metric they'll have, and it usually only happens when that live streaming is. And if you go to, like you're saying, if you go to an advertiser, then they've got a limited want to kind of be part of that. But like you're saying, if they can cut up and have active users that are returning every day or consuming content more than that, then when they go to advertisers and say, look, we've got this share, and it becomes more of an attractive proposition. So I think what you're saying is the first step needs to be, like we kind of discussed at the beginning of the show, taking it away from classing Celtic TV as just that match day, but how does it go across the full 7 days a week? And they need to concentrate in the grassroots of that to then build into something more, because that's where the revenue is going to come. That's where they're going to make the profit on it.
Absolutely. Gav, sorry, please go ahead. That's exactly it. Yeah.
So fantastic, Ian. Gav, does all this digital stuff make sense to you when you hear Ian seems to be well up in this talking to James? Do you have a vision? Do you have it in your head what this whole thing looks like? We're talking about content creators on a single platform, some of whom Celtic Club have said, yes, you're okay, we'll endorse you. The rest are free for all. Do you get it? Do you get the picture of what this looks like?
Well, that's one of the first things that I ask myself is, why would Celtic TV welcome all comers onto their platform? There are all sorts of legal ramifications and concerns about that. And in our preliminary discussion, we talked about, well, look, there's various things Celtic TV could do to engage with their worldwide fans, to bring us in, to allow us to participate. But it doesn't have to be restricted to an official channel, as we discussed. It could be a fan-led thing where there is, what's the term you use, James? Like not a marketplace, but I can't remember the term you used, but we're a place where everyone can come together and bring whatever their Celtic content is onto that platform. And it doesn't have to be officially sanctioned. If you think about all the different people that could be there, there's like Celtic merchandise, there's Celtic art, all sorts of stuff. And, it could be a monetizable platform that gives value back, not just to the people who are participating, but all the people who are there to enjoy it, and also to the club. Maybe, David, that's where the conversation is going to go next, is it?
Yeah. So I want to kind of for those, because I've had the sort of opportunity to discuss this a lot more with James, and I'm able to see some of the content that he's involved in and the platforms that work there. What does it look like for everyone? How do people engage with it? And what would it mean for the future? So is it this? Celtic TV itself becomes free to everyone to be able to watch it, talk about it, do watch-alongs, wherever you are. And because all of this captive audience, these 9 million worldwide, 9, 12 million. We're not quite sure. 9 or 10 million worldwide Celtic fan base are coming into a place, giving over their data, and advertisers and marketers are able to come into that space, whether it's part either sanctioned by Celtic Football Club itself, or whether or not it's we'll just give you access to that. That's where they are. And the money finds its way back to the club as well, and or to those individuals who do full-time Celtic stuff. There are podcasts out there. How does this work?
Yeah, I mean, I think, Gav, the word was community that we were looking for. Creating a global community of Celtic followers, a digital global community there.
Actually, I've just found it. A digital clubhouse is the term
Clubhouse.
that you used.
There you go. Yeah, there you go.
Chat.
So how do we create that digital clubhouse? I mean, effectively, there are technical solutions out there. There's software out there which allows organizations to create their own YouTube, their own Facebook, and all that A Celtic World would need to do, or the followers clubs around the world would need to just basically create one platform where each organization or each this is the Malaysian Football League here. And what this is the Indonesian Basketball League, where we created official creator program. So they basically allow different creators to create content, and you have to follow certain rules. So if Celtic TV wanted to go the official route and bring creators onto Celtic TV, they could create an official creators program like the Indonesian Basketball League has done. This example here is you can see on the right side is the e-commerce window. So right next to the content, you can be having products and services sold, because you know that every time you click a link, you lose people, right? So click the link and go to this other place to purchase. So if those products and services are related to the video on the left, then you're much more likely, 3 times more likely to purchase than you are for regular e-commerce. So these leagues have created their own YouTube. So when you have your own YouTube, you control the monetization. What we realize is Zuckerberg and Google are very, very greedy, and all the people who are busting their butts creating content for those platforms are not being paid for their advertising that goes on top of their shows because they're too small or whatever other reasons. They're also not being given a big enough share of the tipping or other types of e-commerce that happens on the platform. So when you own your own platform, you control what you give to others. So obviously our MFL, our Malaysian Football League and Basketball League, the official creators, they pay a much higher share than Google and Facebook pay for advertising, sponsorship, tipping, e-commerce, all those different spaces, because they value those content creators. So this is basically the direction that Celtic TV could go, or that an independent group of Celtic supporters could create, basically creating your own platform, just like these leagues have done, and deciding on the rules and inviting the world, the Celtic world, literally to come and create their own channels on the platform in whatever language they speak, and everyone sits in one place, speaks in different languages and in different ways about the club. But I think that might be one of the directions that this might move.
Ian, are we out of date? One of the things that I talked to James about, again, having the chance to be able to discuss this, was actually even something of this podcast, right? Our kind of demographic. You're probably the youngest amongst all of us, but we have a target audience, and actually there's a whole group much younger who don't even want to watch an hour of a podcast and even discuss these things. They want it rapidly consumable as and when they ever want. They may not even want to watch the full game, as James alluded to before. Are we out of date as well? Have we got? We're targeting a very small and dying demographic?
No. So I think there's a, I think when we talk about demographics, there are a lot of different demographics. I think a lot of like there's different demographics of people who consume stuff in YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, etc. There's loads of different things there. I think the difference when we look at something like this and something like Celtic is the technology exists in all these different pockets to serve all these different demographics. So like we're saying, TikTok is a much younger demographic than YouTube. So YouTube prefers longer format, although they do have shorts to try and take some of the bits away from TikTok. Same thing with Instagram, with Reels and all those things. So the technology actually exists and is accessible for everyone at the moment. The problem when it comes to, I wouldn't say we're out of date because we exist in this platform because this is really where this type of content sits. When you look at someone like Celtic, what they are lacking is an overarching strategy. So they are actually present on TikTok, they are present on Instagram, they're present on YouTube, they're present on their own platform to an extent, but there's nothing to join that up or suggest a really good overall strategy. I'm obviously not on the inside, I don't know, but the Instagram is pretty good. They do a good job on Twitter. So there are elements of people being responsible for that, but it looks like there's no overall strategy and there's no ambition to improve what we're talking about is like the kind of ultimately the architecture, the strategy and the architecture that provides the links to all these bits. Because someone who might be watching stuff on Celtic on TikTok might say, actually, Celtic are doing a really good job because that's only where they live. Or if they're only watching stuff on Twitter, they might go, well, actually, they're doing a really good job. But it's the ones who start to go from platform to platform and have different needs. So, for example, I'll watch a YouTube or a podcast at a certain point when cooking, but then I might be in a train and I might go onto TikTok and stuff like that. They've not joined stuff up across of there. And if you look at someone like us, in order to kind of execute that takes a lot of work, a lot of resource, etc., that isn't necessarily available to us. But to a football club like Celtic, the resource should definitely be there. And the kind of cost of entry into all of that is relatively low, depending on what they want to do. But it starts with that strategy and joining it up. And I from the outside, James, I'm sure you've seen it, it doesn't look like that exists. There are pockets of good stuff going on, but it doesn't seem in any way connected.
Well, they're not the only ones. I mean, most of the sports world has not yet stepped into the digital space. So in this way, and Google and Facebook are laughing all the way to the bank because all these sports organizations, how many billions of fans have sports teams and leagues given to Google and Facebook? All around the world. And Google and Facebook are laughing because they're making money on the fans of Celtic, the fans of Liverpool, the fans of Minnesota Timberwolves, who are all the clubs and leagues are happily giving the fans because, it's a free platform. It's free for me to use. So I'll send all my fans over there. Why is it free? It's free because those in the backside, they're making billions off of those fans. So once the sports community realizes, oh goodness, we own those fans. Those are our fans. We should create our own. It's easier for us to create a Facebook than for Facebook to keep those fans if we tell them stop going to Facebook. So I think that's that power. The power dynamic is going to start to change over the next 5 years.
So let me understand this then. We have a clubhouse where podcasts like this we can make our podcast and we can send it to YouTube for sure, but it goes to this platform as well. So you don't necessarily have to choose one over the other, but actually endorse and find yourself on that. And then essentially that platform becomes a Netflix for all Celtic fans to be able to select which show they want to watch and when.
Exactly. Because your monetization will be much higher on the new platform because the new platform will be much more user-friendly for the content creators. The other social media will effectively become promotion. So the first 5 minutes of the podcast will go live on YouTube. But if you want to watch the whole thing, go over to the new platform because that's where I make more money on tipping and make more money on advertising. So if I have 1 million followers, I'm going to tell them on all my social media, go over to this other new place to if you want the real good stuff. I will still put little clips and other bits on the other spaces to keep engaging. But if you want the real good stuff, come over to this new place. That's where I'll be
Yeah, and to pick up on that, it's about eliminating the barriers of adoption, right? So, like we're saying, you can put the content in all the different bits of places because the thing is, you have to be realistic about this. If you've got 9 million fans, 9 million fans are not going to pay the premium. It's going to be a very small percentage. So, what it is about cultivating that over a long period and giving yourself the best opportunity to put these people into the kind of more paid subscription. I mean, I think we know there's rival podcasts that put out their free podcast, right? And then they have a Patreon or they have a subscription service, and that's their kind of model of it. But they're kind of savvy enough to know that if they put the different bits and they've got a big enough audience, they can convert it. And it's a sliding scale. Celtic has the biggest audience. So at the moment, and that's when we talk about the strategy, they need to look at kind of joining up the dots and then not gating everything, but providing, like James is saying, that off ramp that the people who want to consume more, who want to be in that environment, have the opportunity to convert and have a low barrier of entry. So not like, they need to find the sweet spot of saying, watch the rest of this behind, the kind of paywall, if you like. But that's the case for a lot of things, right?
So absolutely, people don't like subscriptions.
Yeah. So one of the things I think probably is the biggest trouble for Celtic is the sort of number of illegal streams, right, that's out there. And they can't really do too much about it, I don't think, right? So the numbers that we are talking about, does everybody believe that we have 9 million worldwide supporters? We know that there was a research done by Capita Consulting. I think the last date that was done was 2003. On the back of trying to launch a credit card in America. But I've seen it range from 9 million to 12 million worldwide fan base. I don't know if that's the case, but surely it's significant numbers. The revenue that's lost to Celtic through illegal streams must be enormous. And therefore, is there not just a very good argument to say, if we can get everybody watching it in one place, 24 hours a day, following the sun, we'll make it free because the revenue coming back to it, we've solved the problem. We don't need to chase down those illegal streams and all the rest of it. We simply give it free, and through sheer marketing scale and sales and data analytics, I'm sure they've got to employ a team of data science to do this. They get the revenue back.
But that's where it switches, though. That's where it switches to being the league problem, because I think we all saw when Neil Doncaster was celebrating the new Sky deal. I think even the least kind of informed amongst the general support in the SPFL were like, "This is not a deal to be celebrating," because it was at a critical point where we could have really taken a lot of control back in terms of the overall TV rights, and we've kind of kicked that can down the road. It would have been ideal to make this thing. So what you're talking about there is, and what James talked about earlier, is when the league rights were sold for watching all the games, because Celtic are part of a group that decide on that, as opposed to them having control of that individually. We have a little bit of control because we can show a couple, 2 or 3 games for your own in the UK or whatever. But that is ultimately our problem. We've missed an opportunity there. So when the next time the Sky contract comes up, this conversation or this part of it becomes the league one, because they own the collective rights, and it's up to Celtic to even either say, no, we don't want the collective rights to be owned, or negotiate a different sort of deal. But that's where this part of the conversation comes in, and it depends on other clubs in the league and the kind of governing body.
So then what about the content, right? So we've got to get to a wider demographic away from the Celtic DAs. I'll classify myself as one of those, quite proudly, a Celtic DA. What's the content difference, James, that you think can be brought in? We talked about the sort of fantasy football thing, having the experts on, having these people engage before and after, sorting out the teams, all of that sort of stuff for a younger, well, not necessarily younger, but maybe a different type of engagement from the fans.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, last year there was a guy who started out giving advice for fantasy players maybe 5 years ago. on a video podcast. He sold his video podcast to FanDuel for $75 million last year. So that's how many people were watching. That's how many people were using his advice to play their games and make their bets, sports betting as well. So I think right now, a lot of people are interested in the players' fitness, who's going to be on the pitch, etc. Not just because they want to go and watch, but because they've got a fantasy game that they've got money invested in, or they might have a bet on the game, or they want to put a bet. So, you've got to educate yourself as much as possible in order to be good at those games or the bets. So a lot of people want to talk and hear and listen and ask specific questions. That's where two-way video podcasting comes in. If you remember those old radio phone call-in shows where you could call in and talk to ask a question to the DJ. These days you can dial into a Twitch video podcast and get your video on there, and you can ask a guy with your video a specific question about your fantasy team, because the players that you have would be different than the players that everyone else has, right? So you don't want to just hear generic advice. You want to know exactly from that guy, what should I do? Which player should I sit? Which player should I start this weekend, and why? So and I want my video to be on there. And if that happens and I get to talk to the guy, I'm going to give him a big tip afterwards. Here's 10 euros. Thanks a lot. So that kind of interactive video podcasting is becoming more and more popular these days, as opposed to people just sitting back and watching a one-way video podcast like what we're on right now. So I think interactivity is the key, and also thinking about what are people interested in. Ian, food. A lot of people are talking about what food athletes eat. There's some video podcasters out there that only focus on the food of athletes. Oh, this player eats this, and why do they eat that? And they interview them, and they talk about the food that's so important to their play on the pitch. And so some people talk about fashion. There are sites out there that only talk about kit, right? So it's really what are you interested in? There's somebody out there talking about it, and instead of just general responses to what happened on the pitch, why do we win or lose that game? I think right now there's 1,000 different things that people are talking about relating to Celtic, and having all those conversations in one place would allow men, women, children, to scroll through one space and see what it is that they like and get into that content. And I think, right now on Celtic TV, if you don't like watching a live game a couple times a week, or pundits talking about the next live game or the last live game, you're pretty much out of luck, because that's mostly what's being discussed. The odd player interview or maybe a legend interview every once in a while. But so I think, those are the things, David. I think everything that we're interested in is being discussed in social media. And that's what these teams are missing out on, is the social media conversations that are happening 24 hours a day.
And so, Mahesh, I think we sort of touched on this earlier, his question to you, James, about from a league perspective, what can we do? Because we've got a really, Ian already mentioned it, a pretty crappy deal compared to our neighbours down south in terms of what they get. I think, as a basis, I think every team gets a minimum 22 million just as part of the rights, and then it goes up and up and up and up, depending on where you are in the league. And I think we get 2 million between us. It's like such a poxy deal. So it's some of it is within, I suppose, the Celtic control, but from a league perspective, how do we extricate ourselves from that? Can we just take away our rights? Is that possible? Or being part of that league, you have to subscribe and you have to be part of that? I'm not sure of how that's structured.
If you want to play in a league, you have to abide by the rules, right? Every year they have meetings with all the teams there in the league to adapt those rules every year. But it's going to be very, very difficult for one team to say, I'm out of the deal. That team is going to have a hard time competing in the league, because if you opt out of the TV deal, the league might say, well, then you're just out, right? So good luck finding a league to play in, or because you're not going to play in ours, right? So it's a very, very difficult discussion. But what I would recommend is that, it certainly does happen where the tail wags the dog. You found big clubs in Europe, big clubs in England, like Manchester United, Real Madrid, etc., do things commercially that were then later adopted by the league for all clubs. So I think if Celtic is a leader in this space, in the space of creating social media engagement under its own ownership, and then it goes to the league and says, you guys are going to, every year our rights revenue is going down because you're just selling it to traditional broadcasters. You guys need to do what we're doing. And if they show the league how to do it, I think the league can do it on a much bigger scale because they still own those live broadcast rights. So that is still a very big ticket, but the revenue from that is decreasing. What are they going to do to stop that? They need to reach out to the social media world to bring in those conversations to augment those traditional broadcast deals. And then once they start harnessing the digital revenues, that money will go back up again. But the league needs to understand that, and maybe the clubs need to show them how it works. This is how it's working for us. It could work 10 times the scale if the entire league was doing it, right? So I think that's sometimes maybe you got to lead by example.
Gav, do you think Celtic are going to do that? We're going to lead by example, or the fans were going to do this ourselves? And is there something that you want to participate in beyond podcasts that you want to see, that you think would be great as a fan to be able to engage with the club?
Well, I don't hold my breath that Celtic are suddenly going to jump into this with both feet, revolutionize the whole thing. I've had to be mute most of the time because the amount of dog barking behind me has been horrific. So that explains my silence. And also because it's kind of quite a difficult thing to get your head around initially, this sort of idea. Now, as a fan, and I saw Andrew Galea saying he just wants to be able to watch the games without spending an arm and a leg or remortgaging his house or something. If there was this platform, and it's, would have to come from Celtic, but it allowed for fan engagement and it had this sort of worldwide user base and had so many different features on it involving people, and they were pulling out the data and it was monetized and people were able to make a little bit of money selling their art and memorabilia and tipping people and paying to get onto shows and all of the stuff that James talks about. Presumably that would then bring the cost of the games down. If they're making plenty of money through all these other streams, they wouldn't have to charge the earth. Are you talking, James, about like a free platform?
Yes, I think there could be a free level. There can also be, as Ian was talking about, subscription levels as well. So these digital platforms allow for the freemium model. Freemium meaning there's a free level of engagement or offerings. And for those crazy, we all know we are crazy sports fans, the four of us. But most sports fans, when you talk about 12 million global fans, there are probably 500,000 super fans for Celtic, right? Right. And then the other 11.5 million are like, yeah, I'll watch a game now and then, or I'll buy a shirt every 2 or 3 years, right? So most fans are like that. So I think the key is to how can you harness that group and get them more interested and motivated, and then having a level that is paid for by people who will always pay for it. They're super fans, right? You got that super fans, but you have really cool access. Maybe there's like a player interview every week or something with Celtic where if you pay whatever that super access is, you have a chance to actually ask that player a question or have a chat with that player one time in the year. If you really make that paid level super cool, then the super fans are like, you know what, I'll pay for that. And the rest of it is free. I'm happy about that too, So I think it's a matter of having a freemium model that works for everyone. And that'll take tweaking, and it takes years to figure out. Oh, maybe I shouldn't have given that away, or that'll happen over a matter of time. But I think a freemium model would work great, and it would open up things to a lot of people who aren't right now being served by us talking heads who are talking in great detail to the super fans. But an average fan would spend 1 minute and pass on to the next thing, right?
Ian,
some of our super fans don't just spend 1 minute; they stay in the chat and bitch about the conversation.
The super fans do, but
that's what they do all the time.
The casual fans, those are the ones.
we serve our purpose for some of the Celtic fans as an outlet for themselves, and we're very happy to do it. Thanks everybody for commenting. Ian, I love the idea of being able to pay to get access to a player to ask a question. Would you pay that money? And what does it do for the potential revenue earning of the player themselves? Assume that they'll have some obligation to Celtic in terms of media, but also they could augment.
No, I think the value actually for players wouldn't be from like doing that and then getting a cut or percentage of the things. I think actually the players, especially the savvy players now, are quite aware of personal brand, in terms of a lot of people having like the management of their social media contracted out because they can have a presence everywhere, and then that the money is into their brand. So if they participate in more Q&As, it's actually just more value into their brand because they're being more present. There's more content. There's more eyes on them, etc. Would I pay? I think it would depend on what it was. I mean, if we take this specific example of like a player interview or a Brendan Rodgers interview, it might be that I don't really need to have my question answered, so I probably would watch at a later date. But there would definitely be a portion that would, and we kind of see that in my industry, we do it with webinars. So we have webinars that the kind of top professionals in the industry can attend and ask their questions, and then it's shared and cut up and put out later on. And I think that would work with this as well, because there will be people that want the opportunity to ask a Brendan Rodgers, a Cal Mack their question in a closed environment. And you could definitely do that. And you might get like 5,000 people watching it. And then that is enough to kind of tick that box. And then you put it out later for the other people. But the engagement of those 5,000 people is worth a lot when you replicate over, 3 or 4 activities a month that are similar. So would I watch it? It depends how engaged I felt or how good I thought the content and the contributors were. But I think I know, and James would say this as well, the audience is 100% there. It is a no-brainer. Like, it is a no-brainer. There's people, like I've just recently paid for the premium for Twitter to see if the monetization thing works out. You can see there, people are willing to pay to have a look, and then it's up to the environment to keep them engaged and involved and make it worth their while, and that's where it's at.
Yeah, I see James is getting some grief for using the term super fans. But if you think about the people that we know in the American CSCs, or, the people that we've spoken to all around the world, and Perth CSC and all that, I get the impression, and we're the same, we would love to feel more connected to the club than just watching games and meeting down the boozer, to watch the odd match. You think of those American CSCs, like, they would dearly love to have more direct access, I think, to the club and the players and the manager and all that kind of thing, to feel like even though they're oceans apart, the club that's close to their heart is something that they're actively involved in, for sure. I think there's loads of opportunities for that.
So, folks, we're almost up on the hour, so that's gone really quickly. So, are we going to find ourselves, Gav? I'm going to give you the last on this. Are we going to find ourselves on a Netflix platform style with Axom, the Celtic Way, and others, so that we can start the revolution? Are we going to be the first to do it?
Well, I mean, let's keep that as our long-term objective, shall we, David? But focus on the here and now. I think, like, making sure people don't have YouTube on and they're well lit and things. That's the sort of level we're at one season in.
Right.
Before we wrap up the show, I just want to show some pictures of players on holiday and stuff, by the way. So don't be wrapping up the show.
Well, let's do that now.
Okay. I thought you were going to sort of wrap up that sort of chat and sort of what's the final word on that? Are we going to do it? Not anytime immediately. We're just a bunch of disparate individuals, Celtic fans. Do I think that a fan-led platform, which could bring all the people together, could be a great success. Yes, absolutely. I think there are probably better place to do it than us right now. But if nobody else is going to do it, if not us, then whom? If not
Exactly.
in 3 years from now, when?
I think I heard Ian just about to volunteer.
No, I'm not going to volunteer. I think Gav is right. I think there's a couple of obvious candidates that if they wanted to take this in, I think it is going to be fan led. I think given the procrastination our board shows over a number of areas, unless we see, for example, over the summer an appointment of a new digital director or media director, it won't happen this year. Like I said, the strategy is lacking there. So I think it is probably going to be more fan led. And I think if you actually looked at all the different podcasts and social media accounts and stuff, there's definitely an opportunity for an entrepreneurial mind or a business savvy mind to propose it to a lot of people and get those creators on board. But I think it'll be fan led. I think
maybe this is the podcast. Maybe someone in Celtic sees this podcast and we've started it already. Gav, take us on pictures.
I see this from Strange Love the Doctor. James is to go to Celtic and give his thoughts to the money men. There you go.
Well, maybe that's going to happen.
He's talking to these money men right now, of course.
We never know. That could actually possibly. There's probably Jerry on one of his trips to Celtic. We'll get James along with him because he seems to know and get to meet everybody. So we'll get you there,
James. Movers and shakers, yeah.
He knows all the movers and shakers. That's right. You're taking us on holiday now, Gavin. You're not these pictures, are you?
Okay. You've probably seen all of these. It's just I thought instead of talking about random footballers from across the world that we're never going to sign and speculate about whether they'd be good for Celtic or not on a Monday and then on a Wednesday saying, oh, sorry, that was all complete newspaper talk. Just thought we'd have a look at some of our players, ex-players, recent ex-players.
This is Greg Taylor's wedding, isn't it? There's a good few players there.
Is this Greg Taylor's wedding or Juranovich's? I think this might be Juranovich's.
Oh.
Yeah. You've seen this one?
Yeah, I think he's getting married, old Benji Siegrist, isn't he? I think he's definitely off. I think we can read into that. I think that's why we're seeing so many goalkeepers linked. I think we're going to be replacing 2.
Insert comment about wanting to be that cone. Or Matt enjoying a creamy mouthful or something.
Oh, dear God, Gav, come on.
Whichever you prefer. Here we go. This is Greg Taylor with Chris Ferraya. He got married in Ibiza. Yeah. Here's a bunch of them. They're so young. Look at these wee boys on holiday.
Dave Turnbull's mid-run in that photo. I saw a side, Gav. I was accosted a couple of weeks ago at the swimming by a Cardiff City fan who saw me wearing a Celtic top, and he went on for 5 minutes complaining to me about us selling them Turnbull. So I think that's mission accomplished that we got the money for that. But it's a note to me to not wear my Celtic top to the kids swimming to escape the wrath of Cardiff City fans.
Very good. There's another Juranovic. Matt O'Reilly showing off his six-pack. James, have you've got a similar physique to that? Want to give us some tips on how to achieve it?
Perhaps when I was 18, like how old is this guy? Probably young 20s or so.
23.
I tell you, looking good. A lot. You wouldn't want to see my one-pack. It's a one-pack.
And this is something that Jerry showed us. He says photographs like that are why there are signs like this on Italian beaches. Just to bring the tone of the conversation down. Now we're getting back to A Celtic World's usual content.
We know which channel you'll do on the platform.
There's Matt O'Reilly again in a hammock. I think he went from Dubai to the Maldives. Wasn't that his holiday? You see these three in Spain? Anyone know who the guy in the middle is?
No clue.
Is he the only gay in the village? That's what he looks like to me.
Not sure that's liable now, Gav.
No, well, I'm just quoting Little Britain, who he looks like. Who's this? Do you know? Can you tell who that is?
Paolo Bernardo?
Yeah. With his girlfriend at the Grand Canyon.
Looks
That my
tall.
uncle, who's a farmer, described as the time they went to America. And what did you do in America? We went to that big hole. So, the big hole in America. So it's better known as. Yeah, there's O'Reilly, and that's got to
There's
be
a theme.
Dubai, right?
There's a theme.
Is that Dubai? I'm looking at the background, David.
Oh, I see that. Yes, I would say, having lived in Dubai, that kind of looks a bit like it. Yes.
Yeah.
That's down near the Irish village, I would suggest, maybe. I think where the tennis courts are and whatever in Dubai.
So he's fond of having his tap off. Speaking of taps, Ian, you're wearing a new one. Do you want to show us it? That's the
There
new
we go.
strip.
I would say there's been a lot of discussion about it being a bit tighter. I don't actually think it's a bit tighter. I think it's these there's these slashes up the side. And I think if you're looking head on in a mirror and you maybe have a more athletic physique like me, not if you've got a bit of a dad bod, I think it doesn't, the slits at the side don't do wonders. I think that's the thing that's throwing everyone off. Because I saw someone recommending buying a size up. I wouldn't recommend buying a size up. Buy your usual size, and I think you've just got to accept those slits down the side. I just aren't going to do us any favour this season. Those with a similar top physique like myself.
And if the uptake of Celtic strips is anything to go by, there is a massive market out there for all sorts of things because people buy them in their millions.
You'll buy them on the platform as you're watching it because it'll be your favorite player and you can click and all the money will go to the club. Right, folks, come on. We're on time now. We're well over. James, a huge thank you to coming on and giving us your time. Valuable insights. Let this be the beginning of the revolution where the rebels will win one day, won't they, Ian? And we will have started it here on this channel, along with the commentators and their bickering between themselves. Thanks for coming in. Remember to like and subscribe and tell everybody this is where it starts. Thanks to everybody, and we'll see you next Thursday. Is that right, Gav?
That's correct, with another exciting episode not involving spurious transfer speculation.
Hail, hail, and we'll see you next week.